Things are better left unknown, and I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever grass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a pistol spider. When the grass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Just illusion, manifestation, or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Don't you wish that your weekend was longer than just 2 days? Well, if so, then you're in luck, because here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio, our weekend begins on Wednesday. Yes, you heard that right. Our weekend kicks off every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, with DarkWolf's Den, starring yours truly, Jerry the Dark Wolf. But that's where the fun has only just begun. Make sure you come back every Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show, starring AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. He dives into the archives of vocal legend Art Bell and brings those stories up to date. So make sure that you spend your extended weekends with the animals of radio, Jerry the Dark Wolf and AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, every Wednesday through Sunday, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Rippin'
Rip'n Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rip'n Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson with Reality Shifters and the International Mandela Effect Conference, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den Show on Rip'n Common Sense Radio.
Is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness, this is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Dark Wolf, and welcome back to another episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday, Spooktober 22nd, 2020, and tonight we're going to continue our mini-series on ghosts. This time we're going to be talking about the darker entities, the shadow people, those things you see out of the corner of your eye, those things you see at night that are darker than dark, those shadow people that scare you and go bump in the night. We're talking about those tonight, Thursday, Spooktober 22nd, 2020. But first, today in history. Thank you, Dark Wolf. And today's Today in History actually kind of goes along with the end of last night's show when you were talking about time and time loops. Check this out. In 1884, the International Meridian Conference in Washington, D.C. adopts the Greenwich Mean Time worldwide, creating 24 international time zones with longitude 0 at the Greenwich Mean Meridian. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is today's Today in History. Now back to Dark Wolf. Thank you, Jerry. Wow, absolutely fascinating indeed. Today is when these time zones were enacted. And now we see bills coming along to change the whole concept, right? But that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother show. Tonight we're talking about shadow people, that's right. Have you ever opened your eyes at night and seen a shadow at the end of your bed that was darker than a regular shadow? Darker than dark, as a matter of fact, but glowing eyes. Have you ever experienced this? If so, then you may not be alone.
Somewhere in the woods that surround the cul-de-sac outside of my parents' home, and the cemetery that runs parallel to it, I've seen a tall, opaque, obviously intelligent shadow person. He never leaves that general area. I've wandered out of it and left him behind before. Never has he ever been inside my parents' home. Even in the story following, his feet were planted firmly in the street. He makes me very uncomfortable. His height is towering, maybe 8 feet. When he moves, it's slow and deliberate. Most often, I see him for a split second and then he's gone. I just see him passing by. Usually, he seems to be searching for something, looking side to side. I believe he looked lost in the woods, but since I've seen him in the street and outside the house, I highly doubt that to be the case. I believe he's been watching me for some of the time that he's around, observing more than anything else.
And that seems to be a common trait that we're going to find across these case files, is that they seem to be observing more than interacting.
Even when I don't see him, after I've gotten far enough into the woods with my dog, or go jogging too close to the cemetery, or even just wander outside after a certain hour, I can feel someone staring at me. It doesn't feel good. I can even hear him walking behind me sometimes, as in, I stop walking and hear a few more behind me. I turn to look, and nobody's there.
Have any of you ever had that kind of experience? Hearing somebody walk behind you, to turn around and find out that there was nobody there at all. I actually have had that experience a couple of times.
The thing that really makes me afraid of him is that one night last year, I saw him leaning against my parents' mailbox. I'd already moved out by then, but I was bringing them some bread and other grocery staples. I stopped short on the way to the front door because I saw what I believed to be a man out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there the shadow man was. He was leaning forward, right elbow propped on the mailbox, chin resting in his palm. His other arm was simply resting. He looked right at me. He was totally opaque, as always, not a fog, not translucent, totally solid, as if I could really touch him. Obviously he had no visible eyes, but I could tell he was making eye contact. My blood ran cold. Instant goosebumps. I nearly dropped everything in my hands. It felt like free fall, that feeling in my stomach. I wanted to run inside or yell at him to leave, but I was frozen. He terrified me. If I've ever felt the fear of God, it was then. I can still feel it when I recall him there, staring into me. It feels like he was there forever. It couldn't have lasted more than 5 or 6 seconds, but it felt like it went on and on. Eventually, I could move, and as soon as I could, I jumped backwards into the hedges, and he was gone. Just gone. There one moment, absolutely disappeared the next. Even the feeling in the air changed. He'd really vanished.
And I want to note in this case that the person was completely wide awake and outside, so it really takes away from the idea of the sleep paralysis that we normally hear as the explanation for things like this.
This is the first and only time I've ever seen a shadow person. It was years ago when I was still a teenager in high school. I was invited to a girl in my class's house for a slumber party / cookout. We had a bonfire, hot dogs, marshmallows, the whole 9 yards. It was super fun, and I've got some really enjoyable memories from it. Anyway, she lived in a trailer, and next to her trailer was a trailer that had been abandoned for what seemed to be a few years. It was overgrown by weeds and basically looked like it was falling apart. I was told that the woman who lived there had actually passed away in the trailer. I'm not sure if she was sick or if it was an accident or if the story was even true for that matter. Who knows? Teenage girls like to scare other teenage girls. You know how it goes. Oh yeah, such and such died in there, and now it's haunted. Anyways, I remembered that we decided we were going to poke around the place. In the dark. Yeah. I don't know, maybe one person had a flashlight. Anyway, I didn't even have a chance to get near the place before I saw it. This is the hardest thing to explain, because how do you explain something that looks blacker than pitch black? Is there even a word for it? I remember it was in the shape of a person. It could have been male or female, I couldn't really tell. It was just a shadow, but it was coming straight toward us, and I just lost it. Of course, when I screamed, everyone else did, and it disappeared before it could get close. I still don't know what it was, or even what its intentions were, but I think I'd rather not find out.
And once again, this person was absolutely wide awake when this occurred. So it really brings into question, what could really be going on? What kind of entities are these? What are the shadow people? And of course, one of the most well-known shadow people of them all.
Look, I first had fear instilled in me when I was like 6 years old by the Shadow Hat Man. I was with my mom, and she was off in the living room someplace, like watching Oprah or whatever the TV had at that era. And I was playing with my trucks. I was pushing them along the ground, and we were making little roads and everything. And I found myself on my knees in the laundry room. And I don't know how long I'd been playing there, but I looked up, and I was so terrified by what I seen that well, even today I can't even be alone. I just have so much fear that's built into my personality now.
And you know it's something serious when it really affects the personality of the person for the rest of their life.
I looked up and I saw a shadow man. It was just a silhouette of blackness with a hat on top of it. And I don't know, it gives me the chills to think how long he might have been watching me down there playing. But he was watching me. And I looked back at him and I could see that there's this evilness in him, this presence, overbearing, malevolent presence. And it just shocked me, and I didn't know. The fear was like what you would see if you got your family hit by a car right in front of you, that rush of adrenaline that would shoot inside of your body. I had that fear, and it was gripping me, and it tore at me so hard, and I stared back at him, and he had this silhouette, wide shoulders, a hat. He looked like he was wearing a trench coat, and he seemed to absorb the light and get blacker and blacker. This was in the middle of the day, and he's outside the window, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm seeing blackness there. I was so afraid. I ran to my mom, and I thought that I'd never be able to shake this. And my entire life I've had this fear inside of me because of the Shadow Hat Man. 2 weeks ago he came back, and I tried to confront him. I came at him, and he disappeared into this mirror that was sitting on my desk. I'm telling you, anybody that's watching this, I looked at him, and I stared at him. He didn't flinch. He didn't move away. He's still out there.
And what we've heard so far are just 3 independent case file examples of shadow people and their leader that seems to be the Hat Man. But let us try to put ourselves into this situation for just a moment.
It's the middle of the night. You're sound asleep when suddenly your eyes pop open. You're not sure why. You didn't hear a noise, but you feel something. Is it in the air? Your room does feel colder than usual. You look around your room. Nothing. Relief washes over you and you start to close your eyes when there is something there. A shadow in the corner. Something that wasn't there before. You can't quite make it out, but it looks human. It's so dark you can't tell. You pull the blankets up just below your eyes. It must just be a weird shadow, right? Or your brain playing tricks on you. You close your eyes and count to 3. You know when you open them, it'll be gone. 1, 2, 3. It's gone. No, it's on the other corner now, and it's coming towards you. Its eyes open, glowing red in the dark.
And there's a fear, a terror that washes over you in this moment, that chills you to the bone and normally paralyzes the body.
And staring at you. You're so scared you can't scream. You can barely move. It's getting closer and closer. You reach out, and just in time, you hit the switch on your lamp and see your coat rack. You laugh to yourself. It does look a little like a person in the dark, and maybe the eyes you saw were just the lights reflecting in from the street outside. Do a quiet search just to make sure there's nothing in your room, but you can't shake that feeling that a few minutes ago you weren't alone.
Of course, it's just a coat rack, right?
It's not going to be easy to fall asleep again, but you assume you're safe. The strange shadow person at the corner of your room begins to fade from your mind, but you can't help but feel like it's not the last you've seen of it.
And people tend to encounter these things repeatedly after the first encounter, though this is not always the case. It can definitely be the general case. That's what I've found across most case files.
A growing number of people are reporting sightings of strange, shadowy figures around the globe.
One thing that I have noticed about this phenomenon is there has been an uptick in this about the exact same time as there was an uptick in the Mandela effect, if that means anything.
It begins with a glance out of the corner of an eye, a chance sight of something moving. Then, when least expected, the figure appears in front of the witness. Menacing dark apparitions, so black your eyes seem to slide off it. They move and undulate while watching you. Eyewitnesses say they awaken to shadow people stalking them, watching them, or darting out of sight when encountered.
The fact that they are merely observing will be very important in the second half when we discuss the theories of this.
Reports are from sane and reasonable people from all walks of life.
And it is always incredible and makes these old ears perk up when we start hearing case files from people from all walks of life. That's what is interesting about a lot of these paranormal phenomenon, is it is not picky about who it affects. Anybody can see a UFO, anybody can be Mandela affected, and anybody can see a ghost or even a shadow person.
Is this some new psychological phenomenon, or intruders from some other nefarious dominion?
Two good questions among others that we will discuss in the second half of the show once again.
A number of religions, legends, and belief systems describe shadowy spiritual beings or supernatural entities such as shades of the underworld. Various shadowy creatures have long been a staple of folklore and ghost stories.
It would very much appear that I was wrong about it being a newer phenomenon. Apparently it is only ramped up in recent times. Which again, we will discuss a couple possible reasons for that in the next part of the show.
Descriptions of shadow people are as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, and claims that people have reported the figures attempting to jump on their chest and choke them.
And when it gets physical, that changes things. That's when things get serious. It's one thing to stand and watch someone, but to be physical and to be able to affect the human body, that's a little more than just a ghost now, isn't it? Because so far what we've heard are ghostly shadow figures, right? But I've never heard of many ghostly figures that can physically affect the human body. Now that is intriguing.
Believers and paranormal authors do not agree whether shadow people are evil, helpful, or neutral.
A debate that still rages in paranormal circles to this day.
Several psychological conditions can account for reported experiences of shadowy shapes seeming alive. A sleep paralysis sufferer may perceive a shadowy or indistinct shape approaching them when they lay awake, paralyzed, and become increasingly alarmed.
And once again, I completely disagree with the sleep paralysis explanation, because as we've heard so far in case files, you do not have to be asleep to encounter these entities.
A person experiencing heightened emotions, such as while walking alone on a dark night, may incorrectly perceive a patch of shadows as an attacker.
And of course, I'm sure we've all had those moments where the wind blows a tree branch and the light hits it just right, and it looks like out of the corner of your eye that something has jumped or moved. We've all had those experiences, but those experiences aren't what we're talking about tonight.
Many methamphetamine addicts report the appearance of shadow people after prolonged periods of sleep deprivation.
And it is true, sleep deprivation can have that kind of effect on the body, in which you do see shadowy figures, but that is once again the brain playing tricks on the body, and not what we're discussing tonight.
Shadow animals are often reported as well. However, one interviewed subject said that you don't see shadow dogs or shadow birds or shadow cars. You see shadow people.
And to make the point from yesterday, you don't see shadow dinosaurs and T-Rexes and Stegosauruses running around either.
Indeed, shadow people have been reported throughout recorded history.
Indeed.
Harley Swift-Deer Reagan, known as Thunderstrikes in his tribe, stated that shadow people are parallel dimensional beings who were first recorded by indigenous people in 1153 BC.
And just with what we've heard already, I take this case file very seriously for two reasons. Number one, it comes from an ancient. Number two, it comes from a Native American ancient, and I found the Native Americans have a much better grip on reality than most other people on the planet.
Thunder says there was an awakening between 1980 through 2000, and beginning in 2001, there began the quickening, in which events and time seems to be speeding up. As this is occurring, shadow people are becoming visible as frequencies raise. Thunder stated the shadow people, who he calls inorganic beings, live in a parallel dimension and feed off of our emotional discharge of energy along with chaos. In essence, shadow people are energy vampires.
And this would actually make a lot of sense, and would explain why the fear emotion comes over one, because one's energy is suddenly drained to the point that one cannot move. Thus, the sleep paralysis explanation in certain cases would actually make sense, because we find the paralysis, even in the wide-awake cases, scared to the point of being paralyzed.
Cherokee legend speaks of the raven mocker, which shifts from a menacing bird into a grotesque human-like shadow. It was believed the raven mocker's mission was to capture the souls of those who were facing death.
And once again, we find this view of the shadow person as an omen of some type.
Many report seeing shadow people wearing a cloak or a shroud. Some may appear to be dressed in robe-like apparel, although they have been reported in many shapes and sizes. Many people describe them as small, human-like figures with red eyes.
Once again, we have these small figures, but we've got the shadows and the red eyes this time. It does remind me a little bit of the stories last night of the shorter, smaller creatures.
The most common descriptions of a shadow being is that of a tall man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. Details vary as to whether he has no facial features at all, or glowing eyes of red or yellow. Some speak of only seeing this creature once in their life. Others have reported seeing several sightings concentrated in one area. The similarity lies in the stature of the creature and the hat it appears to be wearing. There's also the general consensus that it is malevolent in nature. One thing is certain, this Hat Man is believed to have been seen in places all over the world. In the United States, there seems to be an emphasis of sightings on the Northeast. However, it is certainly not indigenous only to those areas.
Now here, once again, we have a very specific piece of information in the case file. The fact that it's specifically in the Northeast majorly, I don't know what to make of that or why that would be the case, but it is interesting that there's certain areas that are more so haunted by these beings than other areas.
One of the things that sets the Hat Man accounts apart from some of the other shadow entities is the interest this creature seems to show in those who have seen it. While many shadows are seen out of the corner of the eye, only to disappear once one focuses on them, the Hat Man seems to want to be seen. This seeming intelligence of the entity is possibly what gives it the negative perception that it has.
And as we discussed last night, the intelligent hauntings seem to have this version of free will. But as we'll discuss in the second half, there may be another reason why this free will is being displayed. But once again, we'll get to that in the second part of the show. But what would happen if a shadow person were to gain a skin of some type, right? There may be another phenomenon going on recently that connects to this shadow person phenomenon directly.
Within the realm of the bizarre, there is a new and interesting phenomenon emerging that could be shadow people possessing the bodies of children. It's called black-eyed children, and reports have been made recently. Black-eyed children, or black-eyed kids, are an urban legend of supposed paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 and 16, with pale skin and black eyes, who are reportedly seen hitchhiking or panhandling, or are encountered on the doorsteps of residential homes. Tales of black-eyed children have appeared in pop culture since the late 1990s. The supposed origins of the legend are some 1998 postings written by Texas reporter Brian Bethel on a ghost-related mailing list relating to alleged encounters with black-eyed kids. Bethel describes encountering two such children in Abilene, Texas in 1996 and claims that a second person had a similar unrelated encounter in Portland, Oregon. Bethel's stories gained such popularity that he published an FAQ just to keep up with demand for more information about the new urban legend. In 2012, Brian Bethel told his story on the reality television series Monsters and Mysteries in America. He wrote a follow-up article for the Abilene Reporter News describing his experience and maintaining his belief that it was legitimate. Alleged sightings are taken seriously by ghost hunters, some of whom believe black-eyed children to be extraterrestrials, vampires, ghosts, or shadow people in human form.
And of course, I would definitely argue the latter, the shadow people gaining some type of human form.
In the last few years, this frightening phenomenon of the black-eyed children visitations has swept the internet. Whether or not the stories of midnight encounters with the mysterious black-eyed kids have any truth to them has been a hotly debated topic. But that hasn't stopped tales of the BEKs from popping up on message boards, in chat rooms, and on paranormal podcasts. Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they want? We aren't sure.
And once again, just like the other case files that we discuss on this show, Well, you start to find the same information over and over in the case files. You start to take notice, and this is no different. Most all of the cases go something like this.
No matter who tells it, the encounters usually occur the same way. Someone home alone in the middle of the night hears a knock at the door. When they peek through the window, children, normally in a pair, are seen standing in the cold. As the resident cautiously cracks open the door to see what might be wrong, a familiar feeling of dread washes over them. The strange children beg to be let inside, but something isn't right. There's something off about these kids. As the lonely resident looks closer, they see that these children's eyes are black as an oil slick, an unnerving detail that causes them to slam the door and deny their pleas for entrance. Some of them call the police, others clutch a weapon, but never ever do they let the black-eyed children inside.
And one thing that I have never heard is a case file from a person who did let them in. And you can take that for whatever it may be.
Encounters with black-eyed children are always frightening, such as this visitation by a Marine in North Carolina.
Now you know that it has got to be something incredibly serious if it scares a Marine. A Marine is one of the best of the United States military. It takes a whole lot to scare somebody with that kind of training.
While based at Camp Lejeune, an unnamed U.S. Marine stated that in November of 2009, he had a strange encounter with black-eyed children near the barracks where he lived. The anonymous witness stated that he was alone in his room one evening watching a movie when a knock came at his door. Expecting it to be his roommate, who had forgotten his key, the Marine opened it without hesitation. When he did, though, he was presented with the sight of two small children standing outside. As soon as he saw them, the man stated he was filled with dread.
Once again, yet another piece of evidence that keeps showing up in these case files. The sudden and instant fulfillment of fear within oneself.
And had an impulse to slam the door shut as fast as he could. That was before he realized that both children had jet black eyes. Despite his fear, the Marine asked the children what they wanted, which they responded all the while staring straight at him that it was cold outside and that they wanted to come inside and read. The Marine suddenly realized that no one else was within sight, and as the children took a step towards the room, he gave in to the impulse that was racing through him and shut the door quickly. The knocking continued for several minutes, in addition to a rattling from his window, before the noises stopped and the children appeared to be gone. The Marine made some idle inquiries the following morning, but the few people who had been on site during his strange encounter stated that they hadn't seen or heard anything strange.
Once again, as incredibly creepy as it is strange that no one else encountered these beings, no one else around them even seen these beings except the guy in the house. It's almost like he was targeted for some reason.
No matter if the witness is a child or adult, he or she always see the same thing. All eyewitness accounts, no matter which country, continent, or language, give a glimpse at what was seen and experienced in the presence of shadow people. But this glimpse is a monotonous one. The only experience related to shadow ones which is not monotonous is fear. They bring a chilling feeling or vision of fear that overcomes in the same way the black-eyed people do. In recent times, a number of people who witnessed the presence of shadow beings for longer periods of time has increased. Some testify that they have seen creepy red eyes of the dark, indistinguishable, but often massive silhouettes that instantly appear anywhere and show the ability to walk through walls of confined spaces which defy common laws of physics.
Which, as we know, is the classic example of a haunting like we discussed yesterday.
Many paranormal researchers have studied the phenomenon and in particular agree on one aspect of it. Whatever or whoever these entities are, they feed off human energy, emanate bad vibrations, and negative emotions.
And as we mentioned a moment ago, these entities seem to feed off this to the point that they cause the body to go into paralysis, draining all the energy away, the energy to run, the energy to move, the energy to even think correctly, to freeze you in place. What an interesting defensive weapon for a creature.
There are those that have reported being physically attacked by these entities. Some cases can be explained as sleep paralysis, which is a state of sleep where the person is awake and yet still experiencing REM sleep. The sensation of not being able to move has sometimes been accompanied with visions of menacing shadows, including a hooded figure known as the Old Hag. People have also reported these shadows physically touching and trying to harm them. The explanation may have a natural origin. However, to the person experiencing it, there is a real sense of being attacked. In most instances, the shadow usually is quickly out of sight before a person is able to focus on it, and the ones that remain seem to be more interested in watching what is going on rather than causing harm.
And once again, though I do agree that in a small number of cases, that sleep paralysis could very well be an issue, not all cases qualify under the sleep paralysis banner. But ladies and gentlemen, we need to go ahead and take a network break right here, and we'll be back with the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show, now that we've discussed what these creatures are. Perhaps we can figure out a little bit more of where they come from and why they're here. All that and more coming up in the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show. So we'll be right back after these messages. Don't you touch that dial.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Sex in the city? Nope. Interview with a vampire? Nope. If you build it, they will come? Febreze? Tweeze in the middle? Wrong again. Depends. Nope. Welcome to the Twilight Zone, my friends. A phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. You may have heard of it. You may want to not neglect unbecoming, awake, and spiritually inclined. So sit back, relax, while I blow your mind. Take the thumb off the cell, stop following the sheep. Down the rabbit hole we go. Are you ready for that leap? The Zapruder film, #JFK. I looked at the footage and I said, what the heck? How come there are 6 people in that dang car? Stretch limo, for me, this was all too bizarre. A glass behind the driver, no way, Jose. I remember before in the car, my mind was in total disarray. Trying to make sense of what I was seeing, what I was witnessing. Didn't connect with my inner being. A second woman in the car for me was only the first lady. Do you smell what the rock is cooking? All this seemed kinda shady. Berenstein Bears. Nope. Shazam? Sinbad? Not in this reality. Good lord. An awakening. Was it all a revelation? The naysayers and skeptics call it confabulation. They say you misremembered and call us bad. Crazy. Did you smoke a doobie? Maybe that's why it's a little bit hazy. Unless you experience it, you'll never know. But enough of that. On with this Mandela effect flow. Mandela effect in the house. What in the world happened to Ed McMahon? In this reality, Publishers Clearinghouse was not a fan. Never the spokesperson, but we remember it clear as day. McMahon holding that check while the winner yelled out, "Yay!" American Family Publishers. Never heard of them until now. This Mandela effect has me raising the people's eyebrow. So many theories on what it could be. Have you ever heard of CERN and the LHC? Luke, I am your father. Nope. Sally Fields? Nope. Wrong again. That stands for the Large Hadron Collider. I thought I would mention. You know, the machine that opens up portals into different dimensions? You're probably thinking that this is all science fiction, but you gotta think outside the box and have no restrictions. Alternate realities and parallel dimensions. Okay, I get some of your apprehensions. Could this all be a spiritual evolution? Cause the human race has grown tired of this toxic pollution. Mandela effect in the house. Crazy. Some people, they just don't understand. That's just the way it is. You know? Stay strong, my friends. That's just the way it is. Dolly has no braces? Are you serious? Good lord. Joel Osteen. Oh wait, Joel Osteen. So what the heck happened to the owl? Oh my gosh. Oh, this is definitely the Twilight Zone. This is crazy.
Anyhow, that was Juanito, 1975, with the most famous Mandela Effect rap in all of YouTube. Hi everyone, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's Thursday Look, Part 2 of Ghosts on the Darkwolf's Den Show? If you are and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of Common Sense Radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll return tomorrow night with a look at Halloween costumes as Spooktober continues. We're going to have a fun night tomorrow, looking at some of the very best Halloween costumes ever, and of course, a list of suggested things you may consider being for Halloween this year. It's going to be a fun time. Join me tomorrow night, Friday, October 23rd, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. I'm asking for your costumes as well. I did receive a few emails today. I asked last night as well. I'll ask today. If you've got a really great costume, something that you've done throughout the years, and you have a photo of it, please email it to me at rippinrabbithole@gmail.com, and I will talk about your costume tomorrow night. Then Saturday night, we go in search of seances. We're going to try a radio first. We're going to try an on-air seance, an experiment. You know how I like those. We're going to primarily focus on the Houdini seance and all of the years that Houdini was attempted to be contacted after his death. Houdini always said if anybody could come back from death, it would be him. And many people for many years tried to reach the great Houdini without success. Then Spooktober continues to twist on through the weekend into Sunday with an audience-suggested topic, the fear of dolls. This came up in our Fear of Clowns episode, and we've put together a wonderful way to end the weekend right with the fear of dolls. Join me Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, and we will end the weekend out right. Also, get your ghost stories ready in honor of the late, great Art Bell, October 31st, Halloween night, 7 p.m. Pacific, live calls as we replicate Ghost to Ghost, a yearly tradition that Art Bell would do every Halloween. It's going to be a lot of fun. Get your best ghost stories ready for Halloween night. We're going to return now back to Jerry Hicks and the Darkwolf's Den Show as he continues to howl at ghosts and shadow people. One of my favorite subjects. A lot more rabbit hole to explore. Stick around. You're listening to the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Are you ready for the ultimate Halloween experience? This year, with all the social distancing taking place, Halloween, contrary to popular belief, has not been canceled. I repeat, Halloween has not been canceled. The Rippin' Rabbit Hole is proud to sponsor a unique virtual Halloween event taking place October 15th through the 31st exclusively at ourtrickortreat.com. That's O-U-R, trickortreat.com. Sign up and knock on virtual doors for 17 days straight to win a variety of prizes from national, state, and local sponsors. Check out ourtrickortreat.com for the ultimate Halloween experience this year.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, the edge of your seat, or anywhere in between, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. If you're just tuning in this evening, we are talking about shadow entities and shadow creatures. We've discussed in the first half the different types of shadow entities that exists. Now, in the second half, we're going to discuss the possibilities of what they might really be. We assume that they are ghosts, right? But they might not be just that.
Everything about shadow entities is theory at this point, and there are many scientific facts that cannot be ignored. To truly understand something, all sides need to be examined. Science shows how something can have a natural explanation, which is essential to look at. Only after ruling out what can naturally cause something can we look at other possibilities.
And of course, like the great Sherlock Holmes always does say, once you've ruled out all of their options, whatever's left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
One interesting idea suggests that shadow people are the shadows or essence of people who are having an out-of-body experience.
And we spoke about this on last night's episode also, about how an entity, a shadow, might be seen by one and not know that it's being sent by the person who's actually very much alive and doing something else at the time. Again, this is rare, but it is a case file that we've run across multiple times.
According to Jerry Gross, an author, lecturer, and teacher about astral travel, we all travel out of our bodies when we are asleep.
Here's an interesting concept for you. Perhaps the people that we see as shadow people are those that are napping or sleeping elsewhere in the world.
Perhaps, this theory says, we are seeing the inferior astral bodies of those twilight travelers.
It definitely makes one beg the question, is the spirit realm the same as the astral realm?
Yet another intriguing theory is people from our own future could have found the means to travel to the past, our time.
Now this is an intriguing thought, because if you consider that it would definitely fix all the paradoxes, if you're not able to interact with the past, only able to observe it as, say, maybe a shadow form, this would definitely make a lot of sense.
However they are able to accomplish this incredible feat, perhaps in that state, they appear to us merely as passing shadows as they observe the events of our timeline.
Once again, this idea or this solution would definitely fix the paradox problem with time travel. It's amazing to me how many of these rabbit holes get crossed when we get into these topics. And what is really intriguing is the idea of the time loops that we spoke about yesterday. And perhaps that does play a bigger role than we originally perceived.
Even mainstream science is fairly convinced that there are dimensions other than the one we inhabit. And if these other dimensions exist, who or what, if anything, inhabits them?
Could that very well be the case? Could these shadow people be bleeding in from another dimension? And if that is the case, would we be appearing as shadow people on their side of the, quote, veil, end quote?
Some theorists say that these dimensions exist parallel and very close to our own, although invisible to us. And if there are inhabitants in these other dimensions, it is possible that they have found a way to intrude on our dimension and become at least partially visible. If so, they could very well appear as shadows.
I said yesterday that there was a theory that Jerry and I have been working on that deals with space and the magnetics of the Earth. And perhaps if that is the case, then these magnetics allow these dimensions to bleed through every now and again. Perhaps even the amount of energy at any given time allows these veils to thin out and these shadows to appear at what would appear to us as random. Or perhaps there are certain experiments going on around the world that could increase this activity, or perhaps with the increased magnetics could be doing something to the veils of these other dimensions, whether on purpose or not. Not to name any specific experiments, CERN.
It has long been held by psychics and other sensitives that beings on other planes of existence are of different vibrations.
And we do know that all things are vibration, and all things have a certain frequency, and perhaps these frequencies could be overlapping.
Science is beginning to look at reality on a quantum level, in the same way that particles of the smallest size exist as vibrations. Perhaps, some theorize, the vibrations of our existence are beginning to mesh with those of another dimension, which accounts for the increase in such phenomenon as ghosts, shadow people, and possibly aliens.
Or once again, I dare suggest that the Mandela effect may very well also be one of the side effects of this.
In one bizarre case reported by the UK publication The Star, it says CIA alien hunters claim to have contacted a race of tall shadow people on Mars. This was revealed in declassified government files.
Perhaps shadow form would be a way to explore the universe in which mankind has not quite considered yet. Perhaps one could beam one's essence to another area and explore this area in a shadow form, as not to disturb the flora and fauna around them.
Secret documents released by the agency reveal an alien hunter made contact with a race of very tall and thin shadow people on the Red Planet. Transcripts of one of the sessions released in a CIA declassified data dump reveal a session between a government agent and an unnamed clairvoyant. Mars is probed by the subject who claims he can see very large people wearing strange clothes, living in a rabbit warren type network of pyramids.
And as we know, there's been many claims of pyramids spotted on Mars, and perhaps they really do carry some type of inhabitants.
The CIA transcript is dated May 22nd, 1984 at 10:09 a.m. and reveals the details of the experiment.
Speaking of the government, it brings into question that once again these shadow people may not be spirits at all, but literal people who are still living and breathing, perhaps under government agency experiments.
Psychics were employed by the U.S. government during the Cold War in operations such as the Stargate Project, founded in 1978. In this experiment, agents wrote down details of what they wanted in a sealed envelope, which was given to the subject, but not opened until after the interview. Inside the sealed envelope was the information Mars, 1 million years BC, and a set of geographic coordinates. The psychic was then asked to use his powers on the information in the envelope and tell an agent what he could see. The psychic said,
I'm seeing, it's like a perception of a shadow of people, very tall, thin. It's only a shadow. It's as if they were there and then they're not there anymore. I just keep seeing very large people. They appear thin and tall, but they're very large, wearing some kind of strange clothes.
Could it be that he was witnessing the shadows because this civilization has been gone for so long, just witnessing the remnants of the energy that was in the area? Or could he very well have been witnessing an alien race that is using shadow technology of some type to explore the galaxy?
The alien and abduction phenomenon are so bizarre that it's no surprise that extraterrestrials are suspects as the shadow people. Abductees have reported in many cases that the alien greys seem to be able to pass through walls and closed windows and to appear and disappear abruptly among otherworldly talents.
And once again, it is like stories and case files that we find of ghosts that are able to pass through walls.
Perhaps, too, they can go about their alien agenda disguised in the shadows. There's a good deal of overlapping among the above ideas, of course. Aliens and ghosts could be interdimensional beings, or aliens could be time travelers. And some believe demons are responsible for all these disturbing phenomena.
And all of these are getting kind of far out there, and these rabbit holes all do connect, as we know. But perhaps it connects to a rabbit hole that may be a little more down to earth than the alien theory.
Islam speaks of the jinn, who were created along with humans as creatures of free will. They, along with humans and angels, are part of the creations of Allah, capable of logic and reason. According to his belief, the jinn live in a world alongside ours, and like us, are capable of either being positive or negative.
And as we know, the jinn has come up on this show a couple times before as trickster beings of types. And I could definitely see a trickster being taking on a shadow form.
It is thought that some of the legends of shadow people come from the possibility of humans seeing the shadows of the jinn while they exist in their parallel world.
These creatures are also said to be creatures that feed off of fear, and perhaps creation of this fear is exactly what they're accomplishing when they show up in these shadow forms. Maybe we're not seeing them through the veil. Maybe we're seeing exactly what they are projecting us to see, if that is the case.
There are religious groups that view shadow entities as demonic in nature. The shadows themselves are not thought to be demons, but rather watchers for potential souls to be claimed.
And of course, when we hear the word watchers, we automatically think of the Nephilim watchers, right? And perhaps that is the case. Perhaps these are the dark souls left over from the Nephilim that are stuck within this realm.
This way of thinking assumes that when one is seen, a demon is present. Cleansing and blessings must be done to avert any negativity that is trying to permeate the person or the home where the shadow is seen. This is generally done with a blessing of the area in the name of whatever higher power a person believes in. As in anything, it is the power of belief that determines how well something like this would work.
And it amazes me how many times we come upon the fact that the intent of one's heart has a true intent and physical representation and manifestation in the real world.
If not interdimensional beings or aliens, could shadow people be ghosts? They say that if you feel you have been visited by shadow people, there are ways to protect yourself from them. Most importantly, you will need to overcome your fear, because until you do this, they will continue to feed off of it.
And fear is an incredibly strong emotion indeed.
Not that they are intentionally trying to scare anyone. Perhaps they are trying to reach out to a person, or maybe they don't even know that they are appearing in another world. In the meanwhile, what you can do is stay calm and date the time and place you saw the shadow figure and discuss it with other like-minded people who have experienced the same thing.
And this, of course, is good common sense advice for anybody dealing with something that is traumatic in their lives, or something that they just cannot explain. It's a lot easier when you find others who can share and relate to your situation. But before we close out, we do need to mention one more shadow character, and this information might bring together the answers for everything else. How many of you have heard of a tulpa?
A tulpa is a type of supernatural entity that takes on the form of a character from legend and folklore, or from a person's imagination, and acts out that persona. It literally means manifestation.
And there would be our first clue. The fact that the name tulpa itself means manifest.
This concept originated in Tibet within early Buddhist texts about the ability to create a mind-made body, and is the basis of the thought form. Some beliefs include human beings creating their own tulpas purely from thought, manipulating invisible energy into visible forms.
Perhaps even shadow forms.
So, is it possible that some of the supernatural entities that surround us today were created from somebody's own thoughts? Let's take a look at some of these tulpas.
Could a shadow entity be just that? The shadow thought form left over from somebody that was there? Like a signature, if you will? Kind of like the residual haunting that we discussed last night, but in energy form.
Probably the most popular possible tulpa today is Slenderman.
And I mentioned there was one more creature that we had to talk about, and that would be the Slender Man indeed. And the Slender Man has an intriguing story.
I say possible because it's hard to say whether or not this entity has really become manifest, and its origins were purely fictional. Slenderman never really existed.
At least not in the beginning.
Slender Man was created online in 2009 as part of a Photoshop contest thread in the Something Awful forums by Eric Knudsen, under the username Victor Surge. The contest invited users to create paranormal images through Photoshop, and Surge posted 2 photos of a tall, shadowy figure haunting children at play. He gave the photos a small story and included with his submission a block of text that read, "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them, but his persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." 1983. Photographer unknown, presumed dead. I don't want to go too deep into Slender Man here because we already have an entire video on this internet urban legend.
It is intriguing, though, that the idea started from a contest, just a fake photo. And this is something that has been suggested by some Mandela effect researchers, that things can be brought into reality like that. Perhaps enough energy was put on the Slender Man that he became manifest into reality. And if that is the case, how much energy is needed to create a random manifest shadow into reality?
But here are some basics about what happened. With a strong positive reaction to the photos he created, Victor Surge continued to post new altered photographs and added to the story of what was now being called Slender Man. But now others on the forum began to submit their own photos and story elements as well. The myth and lore of Slender Man grew, his story encompassing hundreds of pages, and an internet urban legend was born. Slender Man inspired the popular Marble Hornets web series, a number of independent video games, found itself a prominent position on the popular creepypasta horror website, and became the subject of countless pieces of fan art. From the projected obscurity, a facelessness that breeds mystique, and with a storytelling vehicle that eliminates the fourth wall, Slender Man became the internet's boogeyman. The fate of his victims was also rather ambiguous and vague, fueling that mystique.
And I'm sure you guys have heard by now the story of the high schoolers who killed the other high school girl in the name of Slender Man. Could a ritual like this just help to manifest it into reality that much more quickly?
So, is there now a Slender Man tulpa? Has the collective thought energy of thousands, perhaps millions of people from all over the world culminated to create its own entity?
The answer to this is going to be very intriguing, because it also brings to mind another question. If there wasn't an entity that we call God per se, for instance, the Christians' God, and they've put enough energy collectively upon this entity being a thing, could, in essence, God have been retroactively created? Now there's one to wrap your mind around.
Or, perhaps, has an entity answered the call of all these people and decided to take on the persona of Slender Man? In either case, neither would be a real Slender Man, since Slender Man never really existed to begin with, and it would cause us to question what kind of power it really had, if any at all. Even if this concept were to be real, and some sort of entity decided to take on the persona of Slender Man, this would still not be a real Slender Man, as described in the internet folklore.
Because, for one, it would have a different origin story, now wouldn't it? But that aside, it still wouldn't be the Slender Man. It would be an entity emulating the character of the Slender Man.
The abilities of this tulpa would be restricted to the abilities of the entity creating the tulpa. So if it really existed, would it only be a mere shadow of Slender Man?
For a lack of better terms.
In his book, The Mothman Prophecies, John Keel proposes a tulpa in the very first chapter that actually has nothing to do with the Mothman, but a haunting in New York's Greenwich Village. In an old house that has been investigated by many over the years, including Dr. Hans Holzer, a phantom in a long black cape and a wide-brimmed hat has been seen moving about from room to room. Some say He was a spy from the American Revolution who was caught and killed in the house. However, this house was lived in by Walter Gibson, the writer who created the Shadow novels, the 1930s character who lurked in dark alleys wearing a cape and wide-brimmed hat. Prior to Gibson living in the house, there had been no known reported hauntings. However, within 20 years after Gibson left the house, it was suddenly haunted by the hat-wearing ghost. Keel suggested that Gibson's powerful mind, constantly creating the shadow stories and projecting this character out into the universe, could have created a tulpa, which became the entity haunting the house in Greenwich Village.
If this is possible, then shadow entities could very well be just the tulpas left over from people that didn't realize that they created them in the first place.
From this, the question then becomes, are ghosts tulpas? Ghosts are generally two types of things. A human spirit still lingering about a particular location, what we would call its haunt, or residual energy playing back a scene from some day gone by and can't be interacted with. We cover types of hauntings in another video, so we won't get into all of that here. However, a tulpa could be the haunting at a particular location and seem very much like a ghost or a human spirit, but not really be one at all. It takes repeated investigative work to determine what the entity may actually be.
So a ghost and a tulpa being one and the same cannot be ruled out. Now that is absolutely intriguing indeed. But what do you guys think? Do you think tulpas are real? Do you think these shadow people could be tulpas? Could they be other dimensional creatures? Could they be aliens coming to investigate Earth in a different form than we are used to seeing? Or could people just be chasing their own shadow? And with just a little common sense, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show for Spooktober 22nd, 2020. I hope everybody has enjoyed part 2 of 3 of our ghost series. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right here with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry. The weekend fun has just now only begun. Do you guys have a picture of your Halloween costumes of years gone by? Well, go ahead and send it in to Mr. AJ, because he's going to be talking tomorrow night about Halloween costumes. What was your costume as a kid? Or perhaps last year? I like to get in my wolf form and go out and run around the neighborhood when I can. Although they've asked me not to do that in public anymore. Something else you don't normally do in public is seances. That's right. Saturday night, Ray J the Rippin' Rabbit over there. AJ the Rippin' Rabbit over there is going to be talking about seances. That's right. Those, meetings around the table. You know, you cannot have a Halloween Spooktober without talking about seance and spirit calling, right? Then on Sunday, AJ's going to be talking about that fear of dolls. Are you scared of those little creepy things that sit in the corner and smile at you? Are you afraid of dolls? Then you definitely want to check out this episode on Sunday. And that will round out the weekend here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. And I cannot wait for next Wednesday to pick back up and kick off an all-new weekend when we start off with Demons with the DarkWolf's Den Show. And then on Thursday, we're gonna have the Halloween Spooktacular celebration. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be lots of fun. So you guys, make sure you stick around all this weekend and next weekend, because next weekend AJ is also going to do the Ghost to Ghost call-in show. Make sure you have your ghost stories ready. One place that you might find entertaining between now and then would be the rippinrabbithole.com. That's right. RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. Over there you're gonna find the 24/7 backstage lounge. That's right. Scrolled halfway down the page once you click on that and find the VIP entrance. That's where you're gonna find me and the other Rippin' Rabbits. That's right. Come on into that VIP entrance room with us. Select your microphone and camera. You can turn that off the moment you get inside. Go ahead and hang out with us. We would love to have you over there. And while you're searching around the rippinrabbithole.com, make sure you drop by the groups page over there. Our buddy Juanito 1975 has his lucid dreaming group over there. Perhaps you can get him to talk to you more about some astral travel. That's right. Or if you have a show suggestion for us, go to the DarkWolf's Den Show Topics and Suggestions group. As tonight's topic was a suggested topic, and you can have your topic on the air just as easily. Guys, my name is Dark Wolf, and on behalf of Juanito 1975, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walter House, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, and everybody at Rippin' Common Sense Radio, we thank you for being here, and remember always, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. How?
The most famous animal howl in radio, Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den. If you enjoyed tonight's look, part 2 of Ghosts and Shadow People, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. Jerry will return next Wednesday and Thursday night with an all-new episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show. I'll be back again tomorrow night with a fun look as Spooktober continues at Halloween costumes. I'm going to share with you some of the very best Halloween costumes I've been able to find. I'm going to share with you a few ideas for what you could be this year as Halloween. And I'm going to look at your Halloween costumes. So if you've done a really fantastic Halloween costume in the last few years, even going all the way back to your childhood, find that photo, find that picture, and email it to me at rippinrabbithole@gmail.com. That's RIPONRABBITHOLE@gmail.com. I'd love to see your costumes and use it on air, so please make sure to dig that picture out. Scan it if you have to. Take a picture of it if you have to, and email it in. Let's see how many costumes we can come up with tomorrow night. Again, that's Friday, October 23rd, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then, Saturday, October 24th, we're going to dive down the rabbit hole of seances. That's right. Is it possible to make contact with people from the other side? Be here for a radio first. We're going to try an on-air seance experiment. It's going to be a lot of fun. See if we can contact Harry Houdini. So far, since his death Halloween night, 1926, not a peep. He hasn't had a peep. So we're going to see. Then we'll end out the weekend right together Sunday night with an audience-suggested topic, the fear of dolls. This came up in our Fear of Clowns episode. Believe it or not, there are a lot of creepy dolls out there for us to explore. So it's going to be a fun way to end the weekend of Spooktober together Sunday night, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Do you have a fear of dolls? Perhaps I'll have a cure. I'm looking forward to spending the rest of the weekend together with you as Spooktober continues to twist through the rabbit hole. Coming up, Halloween night, October 31st, a tribute to the late great Art Bell and a yearly installation he would do every year called Ghost to Ghost. It's going to be a live call-in show. We want to hear your dwarf stories on air. It's going to be a fun night, October 31st, Halloween. So, wherever you are, good morning, good evening, or good day, whatever the case may be, I'm AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night. Are you ready for the ultimate Halloween experience? This year, with all the social distancing taking place, Halloween, contrary to popular belief, has not been canceled. I repeat, Halloween has not been canceled. The Rippin' Rabbit Hole is proud to sponsor a unique virtual Halloween event taking place October 15th through the 31st exclusively at ourtrickortreat.com. That's O-U-R, trickortreat.com. Sign up and knock on virtual doors for 17 days straight to win a variety of prizes from national, state, and local sponsors. Check out ourtrickortreat.com for the ultimate Halloween experience this year.
Things are better left unknown, and I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever she's a sneaky hider, hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. Is clean, she's a sneaky hider, hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Just illusion, manifestation, or a dark deep